Jekyll, or the prototype to Sherlock. Before Stephen Moffat brought the iconic detective to the modern era and effectively introduced the world to that beautiful British hottie Benedict Cumberbatch, he attempted to bring another novel from Victorian times into our age, The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Robert Louis Stevenson. Unlike his more successful series based on the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle stories, Jekyll is more of a sequel to the novel rather than a direct adaptation. The series stars James Nesbitt, who you may recognize as the Dwarf Boffier from Peter Jackson's Hobbit film series, as Dr. Tom Jackman, a modern-day descendant of Dr. Henry Jekyll. And like Dr. Jekyll, he discovers he has a curse, which means he occasionally transforms into Mr. Hyde, a superhuman who's more playful, flirtatious, yet also brutal and ruthless, who's also portrayed by James Nesbitt. So to protect his family, he abandons them and isolates himself in a heavily fortified flat under the careful watch of his psychiatric nurse, Catherine Reimer, portrayed by Michelle Ryan. He then forms an uneasy truce with Hyde, using a microcassette recorder in order for them to leave messages to each other. However, he can't bring himself to break total contact with his family and occasionally visits them when he can. Unfortunately, Mr. Hyde catches on to this and eventually finds them and comes to care about them. Meanwhile, there's a secret organization called Klein and Utterson who's stalking and keeping track of Jackman and Hyde's movements while trying to discover the secret behind the scientist's transformation into his alter ego. This 2007 series was truly awesome. It's just disappointing that it only lasted one series. On the one hand, it does stand good on its own as a miniseries. On the other, it ended on so many cliffhangers, setting it up for a second series, one which never came. I'd have to say the one great thing about this series is the lead star, James Nesbitt. As Tom Jackman, he's quiet, cold, calculating, tortured, distant, and never smiles. As Mr. Hyde, he's powerful, mischievous, and an overall ball of energy, seemingly almost pent up, leaking out, and God save us if it ever falls out in full force. It's truly a performance you have to watch to gain a full understanding and appreciation for it. You can't just hear it from me. Plus, he's clearly having a ball as Mr. Hyde. I mean, you see him move around, spout hilariously devilish lines, smile menacingly at his opponents, and anyone who watches his performance can tell James Nesbitt is having the time of his life. And it's that energy, more than anything, that makes us want more out of it. Though true, this series is now 10 years old, but if Moffat ever decides he wants to continue in it, I'm more than certain James Nesbitt will drop whatever acting gig he's got, leave the stage, performance and all, and just hop right back into the saddle in full force. How about a crossover with Sherlock? Please? I know most fans beg for a Sherlock and Doctor Who crossover, but this is what I would like to see. The one downside, outside that it's a short series that's only 6 episodes long, there's a slight continuity error between episodes 1 and 2. You see, episode 1 is built around Hyde trying to figure out more about Jackman, or Daddy, as he so affectionately calls him. Most of the episode is built around Hyde trying to figure out that identity, though. And there's this crowning achievement for him when he figures out Dr. Jackman's last name by tricking their nurse, Catherine. He then uses that information to locate his family. While in a scene in the second episode, which involves Hyde's first meeting with Catherine, Hyde establishes that he knows Jackman's name by playfully singing, "It's raining, it's pouring, Jackman is boring." It may have been a flubbing of the line, what with all the fun Nesbitt is clearly having in playing that role, but it kind of throws an observant viewer off. Only briefly. Still, if you get a chance to watch this series, I highly recommend it. Especially a fun watch during Halloween time. Next week on our Nod to 7 TV Fandoms, we're up to number 1. And we're staying in BBC territory. Let's just say, it's fantastic. Turn left, Geronimo! And I'll explain later. Allons-y!